Today we're speaking with Dr. Ericz Z, also known as Dr. Z, internationally acclaimed abundant life coach. Dr. Z, a chiropractor by training, has embraced his spiritual connection. You'll see that in all his work. He's been the participant in many outstanding summits on health and well-being and living the abundant life. He has a long list of publications. He's an authority in essential oils. He is an authority on living the abundant life, including fitness, nutrition, and belief. Welcome, Dr. Z.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Sally. I appreciate you having me.
I'm so pleased to welcome today with all that incredible experience, and with the grace of God, you're going to help a lot of people today.
Well, that's been my heart's desire ever since I became a Christian 13 years ago. So I hope I don't disappoint.
No chance of that. How many years have you been writing on health and fitness and weight loss? Is that 13 years?
Yeah, I had one of those pretty dramatic, I was blind, now I see moments when I became a Christian. And I've always been a writer. I have an English degree. I've always aspired to be a writer. My father actually writes fiction and published, and I remember the first time he published a story when I was a young boy in grammar school. So I've always aspired that. I really did. I tried my hand at fiction and I struggled, but so when I fell in love with research writing, it was natural. So it wasn't up until a few years ago that I started writing professionally and I started publishing in academic journals. However, I've been writing about natural health concepts really ever since 2003, but heavily, very, very heavily, since about 2011, 2012, where I've been, featured in several chiropractic journals and just traveling the country, and in that space specifically, now my passion is more so just not in one genre per se, but like you mentioned, abundant life, which encompasses so many more things than just health or finances. And it's really all about balance in every area of life.
That's so true. That's so true. Well, our focus today is on weight and why so many people are struggling with their weight. What do you think about that?
Yeah, Dr. Sally, initially, it's in my heart, and this is what we have to go by, really, because the research is unclear on a lot of this stuff. As you know, I know you've combed through the research journals and you've looked at this. There is no hard, fast rule. There is no hard, fast fact of what's happening. So what I've seen, we could blame processed food, right? We could blame depression. We could blame the horrible triad, right, of heart disease and diabetes and cancer and everything else, but the reality is food has become a drug. And I've seen that time and time again with my own experience. And I can tell you, especially during chiropractic college, which very similar to medical school is a very stressful time, as you know, and I found myself comfort eating. I found myself in a position where, the stress of life was coming at me so much, the demands, that I ended up going towards things just to give me an immediate, serotonin rush, so to speak. And in my opinion, I'm seeing more and more people, and I guess to me the really answer is this, I'm seeing more and more people live to eat instead of eating to live. And that to me has become a fundamental issue in our society where we have just lost connection with the head. We've lost connection with the head of knowing who our God is, of knowing who our Lord is, of knowing who our sustainer and our provider of every area. So when we wake up and the first thing we think about is food, or I got to get my coffee, which is, essentially the same thing, right? We go to substances to help us think better, look better, do everything versus, if you look at the history of humanity, food was there as a necessity. It was a pleasure at times, but we've taken it to the other end of the spectrum. So we could talk so much more about this, but really, as the bottom line, we're living to eat, not eating to live.
That's a very powerful statement. So what would your guidance be for people to overcome that mentality?
Well, first of all, like anything, and I have to call it an addiction, like any addiction, We need to be cognizant of what's happening. We need to, if we are in denial, we need to find a way of getting out of denial. We need to reach a place in our own spirit, our own soul, where we could see the truth. And for me, it was a vast realization that I needed to let loose most of my wardrobe. I call them fat pants. And, I'm a younger guy, I'm 35, and I've been in relatively good shape, but, I went from a 32-inch waist to a 34-inch waist in a matter of a year after a very particularly stressful time of my life. There's stress in my marriage, there's stress in my family, stress in my finances. I was just in this horrible sympathetic mode, that fight or flight mode for months on end. And it dawned on me. I mean, once I couldn't fit in my pants, it kind of dawned on me, like, what is happening here? That was the physical manifestation of something that I realized. And then I started looking, and I started praying, and really just asking God to open up my eyes more. And slowly I started to see what I was doing, and how food became my God, in a sense. And thankfully, I got it under control before it went way out of control, and I started exercising more, and I tightened up the diet. And, Dr. Sally, I got to make a point of something. I don't eat sugar. I don't eat fast food. I'm actually talking about overeating good food. And that is a problem that we're having right now with people, regardless if you're vegan, vegetarian, paleo, whatever you want to call yourself, you could still overdo it. And I found myself being part of that empty plate or clean plate club, right? Where for whatever reason, I just didn't have the mindset or the self-control to let go of my food until I felt full. And for me, full, satiety was a sort of happiness, a sort of comfort. And then I had to just train myself to stop, and now I thoroughly enjoy eating up to about 75% full. And I don't know, I don't have a gauge, I'm guessing right now, but you eat so you're not full completely. And that we could talk a lot about what that does to the digestive system. But that was an exercise in self-control, and I had to step back. And also, one thing too is liquids. I was drinking way too much water, and I got to tell you, I'm a good student, and I'm very compliant. So when I read we need to drink so many ounces of water per per body weight or whatever your formula is, I actually was overhydrating myself. And what I found myself doing, even though I never drank during a meal, because that was something I always trained myself not to do, to not dilute the digestive juices that would be created from eating, I found myself drinking way too much water. And that is a huge problem in our society, because we are actually overhydrating ourselves. Which is very counterintuitive to hear from a lot of folks, because you can't drink enough water. Yes, you can, because if you're drinking too much water, you're always full. You really don't give your stomach a break. You gotta, in a sense, you hear of intermittent fasting. Well, it won't kill you to go without drinking for a couple hours. And so I had to train myself really to drink more when I was thirsty, because I was actually in the model where I had to be drinking relatively all the time, where you got to be sipping, you got to be proactive. And so there were just some bad habits that I just had to overcome. But, that was interesting, Dr. Sally, is I realized once I wasn't hungry for dinner one day because I was actually full of so much water. And I actually forced myself to eat because, I got to eat dinner. And, that mindset, too. I don't need to eat 3 meals a day. Sometimes I only have 1 meal. So I've approached a whole different way of life where it's not habit. It's not out of duty, it's just out of more necessity, and I have a much greater control and a better relationship to food.
Dr. Z, you've touched on so many important points, particularly, drinking water. The quality of our water affects our thyroid and different things, so I absolutely agree with you in terms of moderation in the amount of water, or sensible water intake, and not drinking water before meals. But moving along, what concept do you have about accepting where you are and how that affects moving forward?
That can get very deep, and that can get very deep into our past. That could get very deep into some nightmares, so to speak, of some of the skeletons in our closet that a lot of us aren't willing to look at. And to me, to really live the abundant life, we need to open up our eyes, realize that we are all under construction. We are all creators, or we are all creators of our life, so to speak, as we are being made in God's image, right? God is the creator of all. Yet we do have, God has given us that dominion to really create our world the way that we want to, with the thoughts that we have, with the words that we speak, with the people that we put in our lives. And so being empowered by that we are made in God's image, how do we look at ourselves? How do we look at others? It could be very emotionally disturbing at times to really see us for who we really are. And the reality is, for me, I see myself in the Judeo-Christian model of I am a sinner saved by grace, and I have a lot of patience for myself and for other people because I realize that I am part of fallen humanity. But you know, by God's grace, I can do all things through Christ. And by God's grace, I can move mountains, and I could shape a future that could literally help millions of people, which is something by God's grace I have done. And so it's coming to the realization that I can only do so much on my own. But being powered by God, I feel so empowered that I can literally do anything. And so it has been a transformation for me to kind of step back, being a mindset of, I'm a type A kind of person. I'm a self-made man. I can do things in my own power, but I'm limited. And so to step back, to look at who I really am and say, you know what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? Asking a loved one. I actually asked my wife, which is probably the hardest thing I've ever done in our marriage. I said, let's shoot straight for a minute. Tell me the good, tell me the bad. Let me know a little bit about what you see. And the people that God puts in our life, our spouses, our children, our parents, they're the ones who really know us best. And they see us through the good and through the not so good, right? And so I opened myself up because I had a desire, and I still do, to grow and to be the best person that I could be. But I realized that we're all being pruned. And so sometimes that's not very pleasant, right? Ask a tree when it's being pruned if that feels good or not. But spiritually and physically, we actually are being pruned, right? And so I had to embrace that season, as challenging as it might be, and especially criticism, and allowing myself to have my pride stepped on, which is very challenging at times. And so it's been a transformation. And I got to tell you, Doc, it wasn't until I was in my late 20s, early 30s, that I was even willing to have this kind of conversation with myself first, and then with others. And that's really empowering. And so with that, it brings me to an interesting experience. I had a friend of mine who's a chiropractor who's struggling right now in practice. And his business coach recommended him to contact 5 people that would give him the truth, the brutal, honest truth about his 5 strengths and 5 weaknesses, and just have him listen. And he called me first. He's like, Eric, I'm struggling with this right now. I got to get a breakthrough, and this is what I was told to do because I got to provide for my family, and I just don't know what else to do at this point. Tell me. And so when we had that conversation, that was really a big moment for him, because up until that, he wasn't willing really to hear or open to hear about some of the, not so good parts of him that he needed to work on. So that's a big part, folks. I don't know what it is, whatever it takes. Sometimes it's a failure, sometimes it's a divorce, sometimes it's a business that falls apart. But we come to the place where we're like, God, we fall on our knees, we look up to the sky, and we open up our hands and we say, God, I'm open now. Tell me, use me. Kind of like that Jonah experience in the belly of a whale,
Yes. So can you hone that answer into how people can use it for their weight struggle?
Yeah, and Dr. Sally, this is a really touchy subject. I actually wrote a report on this recently. This is tough. Number one is realizing the fact that someone is, realizing the fact that you are overweight is a huge barrier. The reality is, our average weight in America is pretty much overweight. So everyone's overweight. So how do you know you're just normal? And that's a problem, because when you look normal, which isn't healthy in America, which is overweight, you don't have the automatic mindset of, hey, I look different, because we're not different. And so when overweight's the new normal, how do you even know? And that, to me, has to come to a point of this. for someone to realize their health habits, their financial habits, their sexual habits, whatever it might be, to know that these habits are unhealthy, are not successfully driven, then that takes a a direct relationship with God. Like the Bible says, you need to be united to the vine in John 15. And I think as we are connected more with God, and I've seen this time and time again in my own life and other people's lives, God will reveal things to us. So first and foremost, and I see this in the church, and that's really my number one priority right now, is sharing this message to the church. Because by the way, the church is, quote, fatter and unhealthier than non-church members. Like, that's a fact. And that's unbelievable when you think of it, for many different reasons. Because you would think spiritually minded people would be healthier than non-spiritually minded people. You would so think. So the reality is this, and I recommend for people, if wherever you are in life, wherever your health is, just focus, seek first the kingdom of God. And as we seek first the kingdom of God through prayer, Bible study, fellowship with others, God will reveal to us things in His timing. I've seen it time and time again. He'll reveal things. And if He reveals to you, like me, maybe you're not fitting the pants like you used to. Don't chalk that up to being normal. And you know what? If you get convicted, don't, in a sense, desensitize your convictor by ignoring it. And how many times do we do that? How many times do we go for that candy bar? Or we say, oh, we're busy, we got to take little Susie to practice today, let's just get a quick McDonald's. And you get that small voice that says, oh no, you don't want to get that today, and you ignore it. It's a matter of listening to that little voice, because if we keep on suppressing that little voice, our conscience will just ultimately not speak to us anymore, or we won't hear it. And the same thing with God. I believe that. I believe the Lord will speak to us, and if we keep on grieving the Holy Spirit, we end up not hearing God. He who has ears to hear, the Bible says, right? And so for me, it's about seeking first God, listening when we get that little unction, that little drive to do things. And once we start, we'll start to see more and more. And this is where it's critical. Once you start to see, get radical. I don't care what it is. If it's throwing everything out of your pantry and buying things new, I don't care. But I will tell you one thing. It's not more expensive. And Dr. Sally, I really want to talk about this in a minute, because I just went to Kroger and I bought about $170 worth of groceries for me and my kids. My wife's up north right now visiting family with the baby, so it's me and the two older ones. And I got, that includes, some gluten-free diet cheese, pizzas, and, I got a lot of stuff, and even some paper towel. And the lady in front of me had the exact opposite cart of mine. My cart was filled with pomegranates, bananas, organic apples, and bok choy. All the fruits and vegetables I needed. Yeah, we had some eggs, and I had some coconut milk and some frozen diet gluten-free pizzas for the kids for special Fridays. But this lady's cart, I kid you not, the only thing fresh she had was apples. And they were conventional apples. She was filled with Coca-Cola, and her little baby was about 2.5, 3 years old in the cart eating Oreos right in front of me. And my heart was breaking, because this lady was overweight, and I could see this child was just going to be overweight if he continued. But her food, 99% of everything in her cart was processed. Everything came from, the squeezy cheesies and the macaronis and the breakfast helpers, whatever they're called, I don't even know. But all I know but you know what her bill was? $132. Her bill was, and I looked, her bill was $132, my bill was $172, and of course I had, some toilet paper and some other stuff on the side. But you think, is it worth $40? So when I hear people tell me, oh, it's so much more expensive, you know what? Not according to my little experiment, and yeah, maybe $20 or $30 a week will add up to be $1,000 a year. But are you kidding me? $1,000? You can eat healthy, and we had potatoes and sweet potatoes, and we're going to have great hash browns with eggs and turkey bacon and stuff. We're going to have a great food. So with that, it's not more expensive. It can be done, and just follow the instincts that God's given you.
I'm so glad that you talked about expense, because I think to myself, if the food is organic and healthy and wholesome, and you think it's more expensive, eat less. You don't need all that much. And furthermore, when you talk about expense, what's the expense of being sick if you're consuming too much food, too much unhealthy food, and getting sick? You know, time off from work, concern for your loved ones, having to go to the hospital or take you to appointments, and the expense of not enjoying life. So you've touched on such an important point. I'm so glad. Eating good, wholesome, whole foods is critical.
You know, Doc, one of my favorite professors at chiropractic college said this, and it literally rocked my world. I never thought of this, and it helped shape that thought in me about what we're discussing here about expense. He said this: how much does it cost for a bag of potatoes that weighs 10 pounds? And I don't know what the answer is. Let's say it's $5. It's not much, right? $5-6 for a 10-pound bag of potatoes. He goes, okay, now how much would it cost you to buy 10 pounds worth of potato chips? And it, boom, it dawned in my mind. Like, you got to think, that's like $25 of potato chips, right? He goes, if you could just get some good coconut oil, you could fry up your potato chips if you want, or you can make potato wedges. But if you think of it, it's literally more expensive to buy this processed food. And I never thought of it that way, and that stayed with me because looking at the lady in front of me, I'm telling you, her cart, Doc, I got to laugh, and I laughed at the clerk ahead of me. I go, look at the juxtaposition. And I'm not bragging, but you look at her cart, you look at my cart, you couldn't have found two different carts as different possible in the world. And the relative price difference. So thanks for sharing that, because we need to be empowered that it's not only the long-term risk, the long-term expense of healthcare, but immediately a couple bucks is worth it.
Well, not only that, excuse me for interrupting, but, you know, the experience of cooking up your potatoes in coconut oil, engaging your children, engaging your family to do it will make your life experience so much richer. I mean, you know, getting the kids off their phones or their games and making a family experience of healthier nutrition. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, glad you said that. My kids and I have been in this, again, mom's up north, so it's Dr. Daddy taking care of everyone, and we've been really enjoying pumpkin pie. And we make it, and my son's 4 years old, my daughter's 7, and, you know, I get this pre-made gluten-free pie crust at Whole Foods, and pumpkin pie is so easy to make, right? Can of pumpkin, a can of coconut milk, we get some honey crystals and some stevia in there with some, you know, some pumpkin pie spice, and boom, you blend it up. The kids are so excited, and it's healthy, and it's a good treat for them. And don't tell Mom, but I'll give some for breakfast. Why not? You know, I mean, it's pumpkin. I mean, so
it's such a positive experience for you and the kids and your well-being.
Yes, I love it. Memories. I remember, you know, I'm a chef and baker at heart, but because I remember my mom. Some of my fondest memories of my mother and my grandmother are in the kitchen with them. And I just remember making, you know, now they're horribly healthy, but I would never have it, but making Pillsbury dough donuts with my grandma. And I just remember those moments when I was a boy and just talking with her and hearing stories. And, yeah, getting back. And, you know, my wife, I have to brag on her, because she spends a good portion of her world in the kitchen, and she connects with the kids there. She does her stuff there. She connects with herself and the family, and that's also her time with the Lord. I mean, she'll have her earpiece in, or she'll listen to some music or some worship or the Bible, and, you know, it's just a time where we could just get grounded, sing, worship, and praise to God. That's one thing I love to do just spontaneously as I get about my day and work. You know, that's a big part of it, Dr. Sally, too, is we talk about self-image, healthy self-image, weight, is really having a heart of appreciation, a heart of gratefulness, thankfulness. Because one of the things we have to battle is depression, and that is a direct correlation between people that are depressed and overeating. Because, again, you're looking for the serotonin rush, you're looking for the sugar high, and food, oftentimes for people, is a comfort, especially for folks that aren't willing to go to the narcotic route. right? I mean, you have an option. What do you want to do? You want to drink for happiness? You want to do drugs? You want to eat? What do you want to do? You want to have sex? I mean, there's these carnal desires that people have, animals and people have for pleasure, and oftentimes folks go because it's more socially acceptable to eat for pleasure. And so, if you really want to combat weight gain and obesity and have a good, healthy self-image, is to be happy. I mean, just be praising God, to enjoy life. And one thing, Dr. Sally, I've recently read in a study about awe, A-W-E, living in awe. People that have that childlike wonder of, wow, what a great day it is. Wow, look at that beautiful sun. Look at those birds. You know, people that act like this genuinely experience life to a new level. They've actually shown it produces happiness, it produces the serotonin, it produces longevity, and there's something about where the Bible says, raise your hands and praise the Lord. I mean, that's in awe. God is a consuming fire. He is all, and He loves us, and He is a creator of the universe. And as we take moments to enjoy Him and enjoy the creation that He's given us, that will help with weight gain, because that will help produce joy and happiness, which will diminish and reduce depression and anxiety, and then you won't have to find yourself eating for comfort anymore. You'll find yourself maybe skipping a meal, enjoying intermittent fasting, eating when you need to. And I love the fact that right now I am free. And I would like to say this very profoundly. I am not a slave anymore to eating 3 times a day and snacking. Boy, I was a slave to that for a while. Why? Because I heard it. I had to. Dr. Oz or whoever said it, right? You gotta eat and you gotta snack. No way. Give your body a rest. And you eat when you need to eat. And I actually literally found myself eating just because I needed to eat. I wasn't hungry. Over and over and over again. Now, I'll eat when I need to eat. Yeah, sometimes I want a snack and I enjoy it. But let me tell you, you enjoy your food better when you're hungry. I mean, you're really hungry at dinner when you actually are hungry for dinner. If you're not hungry because you just snacked 2 hours before, then you're not going to enjoy your food. So there's that whole eating psychology aspect, too, I think a lot of people don't think about.
Again, so many fabulous points. You know, I live in the city currently, and I thought, I'm going to be away from nature, but every morning I go outside and I look up and see the clouds. I mean, the clouds are nature. I see the pattern formation and the beautiful picture that it's painted. And most recently, I put up some hummingbird feeders, and wow, all of a sudden these hummingbirds, I have a family of 4 hummingbirds coming to my feeders, and I can sit and watch them and not think of anything, just be totally at peace, totally at happiness. And that goes to the point that you were talking about, being happy and being enriched in this life. So I'd like to take it just a point further and say, you know, it inspires me to want to get a camera out and start taking some pictures and maybe writing about it.
Yes.
And that takes the focus off of food. If you're busy, you don't need to live to eat. You know, if you've got the focus of being busy, you're not so preoccupied with food.
And you know, I would like to add, keep the focus off of pain. Keep the focus off of sorrow. Because if we're constantly thinking about the fear of whatever might happen, if we're constantly thinking about the interaction at work, or the argument we just had, or the next bill that's going to come in, if we're constantly giving feed to that, we don't even enjoy the moment. And that's something I've learned too. You know, this last weekend, Jason Upton, for those of you who don't know, he's one of my personal favorite worship leaders in the Christian church. Jason Upton was actually at our church, and he said something extremely profound. I'm never going to forget this one. And he was talking to a missionary friend of his who's in a very closed part of the world to Christianity, and most people think he's crazy. I don't know what it is. It might be Iran or Iraq or China, I'm not sure. But one of the countries that people are dying for Christ right now, being persecuted, and him and his family are there. And Jason asked him and said, "Are you afraid?" kind of asking him an obvious question, but he kind of felt, like, well, let's talk because they're really good friends. And the guy said to him, I used to feed fear initially. And then it dawned on me, the missionary told him, it takes faith to fear. Why not put my faith and hope? And then Jason expounded. And he said, we will give our faith to fear time and time again, even though even though the fear disappoints us. Basically, it's not going to happen. But once you put your faith in hope, and hope disappoints you, most people give up on hope. But if you think of it, there's no such thing as fear. It's fearing the future unknown, and that takes faith. So why not put your faith and hope instead? And boy, that just blessed me. It blessed my socks off, because I started realizing, because, I was raised in a very fear-driven home. My mother was horribly abused as a child, and that, strung through, and my brother and I were abused, and that cycle has ended, praise God. But there's a lot of fear. And when you live in a household of fear, that doesn't end when you get older, and that doesn't end when you get married, right? And so that has a tendency to keep with you the rest of your life, and that can produce anxiety and stress and depression, which can lead to overeating and weight gain. It's all connected, all of this, right? And so when you break that cycle of fear and choose to put your hope in God and your faith in hope, that's a game changer. So folks, whatever it is that you're battling out there, just realize you're putting your faith and your energy to feed that fear, to feed that unknown. Whether it's losing your house, or whether it's an impending disease, or whether you just got diagnosed with cancer, or you're going to lose your job, whatever it might be, you think, put your faith and hope.
Yes, fear is the absence of love, and if you can train yourself to stay in the moment, like you've been talking about, and connecting with a higher power, that really will help you to be on the right path. Let's get back to food and giving your body a rest. I really like what you had to say, because, I spend a considerable amount of time in South America, and in South America, breakfast is not the most important meal of the day.
Yeah.
After all, what have you done all night? You've been resting.
Yep.
Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I don't even eat breakfast most of the time, because I'm not hungry. Sometimes I do, and then I'll eat. And I enjoy some matcha green tea with maybe a little bit of pureed pumpkin. I'll make like a matcha latte. I'll put some maca powder in it. I'll sometimes do a morning smoothie. Yeah, once in a while I'll treat myself, and I'll with the kids, and we'll fry up some sweet potato fries and hash browns and eggs. But I rarely ever have, and I used to. I will tell you again, a victim of my own ignorance in a sense, but a victim of the system, because we're told you got to do this, you got to do that. I would have my big bowl of oatmeal and my fruit in it, and it would be healthy. It would be the good stuff, but I would be weighed down. I would have a sugar crash from just too many carbs. I call it carb out. I would just carb out. I would just be done. And next thing you know, you need a cup of coffee, or you need some caffeinated whatever it is that you want to get going, to continue. And so it's a matter of realizing that our body does very well. It does very well with when it gets the food that it requires when it needs to. And and I want to flesh this out for a second, because we're told you got to snack throughout the day if you want to lose weight. Well, that doesn't make any sense to me.
It doesn't make any sense to me either.
Metabolically, right? And the thing is this, you know why? And forgive me for dumbing it down, Dr. Sally, but this is how I explain it to people. As you know, what is metabolism? The definition of metabolism is the amount of energy that your body requires for basically to live. And that is, you need energy to produce all the cellular processes throughout your entire body. That's anabolic, that's catabolic, that's whatever it is, right? So this misnomer of you have a fast metabolism, it doesn't even make sense. There's no such thing as a fast metabolism. I mean, energy metabolism by definition is the required amount of energy that you need for cellular processes so you can live. And that's when you go down to the nuclei, the mitochondria, all those little cells. So how I describe it is this. Every day, let's say you have 100 metabolism points. That's just the amount of ATP you have in your body. That's just what you basically have right now. And that's what you can add to it by feeding yourself, but that's the amount of energy points that you have. Well, your body requires, let's say, 50 of those energy points for just cellular processes, to breathe, for the heart to pump, to rejuvenate your cells, whatever. Now, what's the body going to do with the rest of those 50 points? Well, break down the food you're going to eat, combat disease, and detoxify if you have any toxins, which all of us do just by breathing the air that we have, that's, and drinking the water that we drink and all that stuff. Everything is polluted. I mean, really, there's virtually no place that we could get pure water anymore, pure air. I mean, our pure water right now is in plastic. We're at a place right now where we're just toxic everywhere. So the thing is this: if you don't give your body a break, what you're doing is you're utilizing that much needed metabolism, the energy, those metabolism points, to continually break down food, which is one of the biggest drains of your energy. It is a huge burden, a huge metabolic burden for your body to digest food, to assimilate it, and then to excrete it, whether you pee or poop it out. It's a lot of energy. And so if we don't give our body a break, guess what happens? Our body's constantly working, constantly churning. The engine is never stopping. So when someone sneezes next to you and you end up inhaling, let's say some kind of staph or some kind of bacteria, well, you're going to be more susceptible to getting sick, because you don't have the extra energy to kill that. You don't have the extra energy to create those white blood cells and to break down the toxins that are coming at you. And so there's so many different ways that our bodies are being hurt by overeating, too much food, and overtoxicity. And to complicate that, to me, what I see it as, the extra metabolism points that we get, essentially the extra energy that we have in our bodies, will then be used to break down the fat, so we can live healthy and trim, and we don't have excess adipose all around us. But what we're finding is people are developing adipose tissue, they're getting sick, and it's increasing at such a rate that the only way that we could see of stopping it is to give the body what it needs to start breaking down the fat and breaking down those toxins. But that can't happen when we're keeping on feeding ourselves. And that can't happen when we're giving our body so much toxins from the processed foods and the things that we're putting into it. Because again, it's creating a metabolic burden. So I don't know if you agree with that or not, Dr. Sally. That's the way I understand it, but it's a little unique.
I agree, and furthermore, I think that by constantly eating throughout the day, you're putting a stress on the pancreas and the digestive enzymes, and I haven't really researched, but intuitively, I think that that's why there's so much illness. You're stressing those organs out. But that's for another discussion. But I think the point is well taken. So let's go back. It sounds like you have a focus on mindful eating. Can you give the folks a couple of tips or pointers on how to eat more mindfully?
It's just nothing different, I think, than what I've already shared. In a sense, just to reiterate that we need to eat to live, not live to eat. And that needs to be our mantra. That needs to be our slogan that we say to ourselves. And for those of you who struggle in this area, even to put it on a nice piece of paper and plaster it on your bathroom mirror, and so you see it every time you wake up in the morning, brush your teeth, and go to bed. We got to remind ourselves that food is a tool. It's a tool that God's given us to enjoy. And, blessed is the person that works. And the Bible is very clear of the things that you're blessed. You can enjoy the fruit of your hands and food and, drink and eat and be merry. And, there's a lot of good reference to the fact that we are called. And you got to think, why are foods so tasty? I mean, natural foods, sugars in the fruits, and the foods that God's given us are wildly, wildly exquisite. We don't need to doctor them up with all kinds of extra table salts and all kinds of extra sugars and things. I mean, they're naturally good. Don't get me wrong, I like a little sea salt in my stuff sometimes, but the reality is, the herbs and the spices that we have are so life-giving. The turmerics, and my favorite's pumpkin pie spice. I mean, everything in that is just ultimately great. The cinnamon, the clove, the nutmeg, the ginger. I mean, whatever version of pumpkin pie spice you have, it's good stuff. It's good for, glucose balance. It's good for the blood pressure. It's good for really even suppressing appetite. So you're not, to balance out the leptin and the ghrelin hormones that we're having issues with in our society. So folks, food is a blessing, and I think that when you really look at your meal and say thank you for it, this is a blessing, it's going to be a nourishment to our body, that's really why it becomes more of just a habit. And as a Christian, I have to confess, I've fallen into that habit. I look at my meal, and I just say my prayer, and I make my kids say their prayer, and we get on and we scarf the food down. I don't think that's why Jesus blessed the food. I don't think that's God's design for us, is just to say the prayer, just to say it just because we have to. No, I think there's a point of recognizing the true blessing in it so we appreciate it. And to me, that is about eating mindfully, is it puts food in a different perspective of it is a blessing. And it's not necessarily a right that we can indulge. It's a privilege that we should consider almost sacred. Because if we don't, then look what happens to us. And next thing you know, we start to change the food. And that's the problem I have with the genetic modification and all that we've done is we've changed it. We've lost that sacred connection with God's creation. I'm not saying worship the tree. I'm not saying worship the fruit. No, that's paganism. But what I'm saying is, there's an aspect of saying this comes from God. This is God's gift to me. And there's that sacred awe, that beautiful appreciation. When we lose that, oh yeah, no problem. Let's just start using pig genes and tomatoes and let's make it genetically modified. And then we start bastardizing stuff. And that's when things get really messy. Because now we're a victim. Our whole society has been victimized by pesticides and GMOs because we think we can mess with stuff now. And now we know better. Now we know better than God. And we don't use essential oils. And we don't use natural-based therapies. We don't do these things because, oh no, we don't need to. We can create it in a lab. And so, again, it's having that awe and realizing that this truly is all that we really need. And that's the last point. Is, like the Bible says, the leaves of the trees are for the healing of the nations. When we realize that the foods and the herbs and everything that we have is really all that we need, then that really empowers us to really focus on what's good. We don't need antibiotics to live. Yes, sometimes you might get to a point where, yes, you might need to consider an integrative approach, and I'm not against that. Whether someone wants to take chemo or an antibiotic or whatever, but if that's your first choice, if that's your knee-jerk response, no, I don't think that honors God. I don't think that honors your body. I think we need to really look at how we're created, look at the natural solutions we have first, and then go from there. So if you're battling weight gain or obesity, getting that weight loss pill, that's not the solution. It's not. The solution isn't anything that man or women have created. The solution is out there. And primarily the solution is first and foremost having a healthy mindset of what food is, and then praying and seeking God more and more for the self-control to really kind of say no. And realize, too, that too much of a good thing is still too much. It's in everything in moderation. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that at all.
I really connect with what you're saying, but many of the folks listening may not be religious or even spiritual, so I want to clarify a concept that I have, that giving thanks before you start the meal, any meal, gives you pause to remind yourself that you're eating to live, not living to eat. Giving thanks is like a prayer, and it sets the tone for mindful eating. It sets the tone for not shoveling the food in, but for taking each spoonful, forkful, and chewing it carefully, respecting it, and using the meal time as a time for regaining health. So I think that's a beautiful concept that you brought us into, and I appreciate it so much. And that's probably a good point to end, but there are two last small questions I want to ask you. One, you're an expert in essential oils. Are there essential oils that we can use that will assist us in our goal to be mindful of how we're eating or weight loss? You're the expert. I throw it out to you.
Yeah, when it comes to mindfulness, at least where I come from as a public health researcher, I don't see anything in the research to really help that specific genre, because that's just a new field right now, in and of itself, mindful eating. I mean, even that phrase, most people have never even heard of. But what we have found is even recently, citronella oil. In 2015, there was a study just published this year. Citronella, which is one of the most famous Indonesian essential oils, has a very distinctive aroma, right? And we oftentimes think of it for warding off mosquitoes and things.
Right.
But they evaluated body weight, blood lipid profile, liver function in rats, and even sympathetic nerve activity, and they found that citronella can actually help. In the rat studies, lower weight, even decrease that tendency to be hungry or increase satiety. The problem with a lot of these studies, Doc, is that we don't have human studies in most cases. We have a lot of in vitro studies, cells in a petri dish, or we have a lot of animal studies. So to extrapolate that and to say, yeah, all you have to do is do some citronella aromatherapy and you'll lose weight. Well, you know what? It can't hurt to try. And that's what this one boils down to, is aromatherapy. And there's also studies when it comes to lime oil being treated with groups of mice and showing how it actually decreased food consumption and body weight. So again, and it's not just lime, it's not just citronella. There have even been other studies about fenugreek, cinnamon, cumin, orange, and more. And so what I have found with essential oils, and again, these are just 3 studies that I'm familiar with. What I've found when it comes to essential oils are a lot of them do a lot of the same things. And this is really key to remember. Put things into perspective. Whatever it is, put everything into perspective. And if something sounds a little crazy, step back for a little bit and try to evaluate. But the reality is, citronella is popular in Indonesia, excuse me, because there's an abundance of the plant. In Native Americans would use peppermint oil in the Pacific Northwest, like where we now call Oregon or Washington. But centuries and centuries ago, they would use peppermint for virtually everything because that's what grows in abundance. And same thing with Italy. In Sicily, you have bergamot and lemon and citrus oils in abundance. So you go to these ancient cultures and you find that they use these oils, whatever it is that they had, the plants that they had, they use these oils and plants for virtually everything. And it doesn't mean that one specifically is better than another, but, there's more than one way of painting a wall. And it really encourages me because, there's 15, 25, 30 different oils that you could use for, depression or anxiety or to help manage your blood sugar, which would increase insulin sensitivity, which has an direct effect on weight gain. But it doesn't mean there's one or other that works. So what I try to encourage people to do, just like Doc, you used to practice medicine as a chiropractor, I'm trained to practice chiropractic. I try to encourage people to practice essential oils or practice natural therapies. You've got to figure out what works for you. And I'm a very big respecter of biochemical individuality. I mean, what works for me as a 35-year-old Caucasian with an ancestry to Sicily and Poland is not going to work for a 72-year-old African-American woman. We just have different biochemical makeups, and we need to be respecters of that. And so you look at these studies, and you're like, okay, let's try this. It says that fenugreek, cinnamon, and cumin are good for weight loss. Let's try a couple of those, and let's put it in a diffuser, and let's diffuse it throughout the day or even while we eat, and let's see what happens. And if you find yourself, after a couple days or so, experiencing a change, a positive change, well, that's a good sign. Well, maybe that didn't work. Maybe you might want to try citronella or lime next time, or peppermint or cinnamon, or whatever it is. So you got to play around, folks. And there is safe internal usage if you want to dabble in that area. I always recommend safe usage of putting it in a capsule so you don't have any esophageal irritation. You can use topical. There's topical usage. You also want to dilute it. So there's all kinds of stuff. I know we can't talk about all the details. I know we're out of time, but just be safe. Just be safe.
As we finish up, could you give us a condensed summary of what supplements you use every day? And if folks, you don't have to write it down. You can write me, and we'll send it out to you.
It's going to be a really easy list to write down because I have none.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I have none every day, and that's something that I encourage people. When I coach people, one of the first things I do is get them off of most supplements. And I say, okay, let's take a break. Let's give our body a break. And as I found people overeating, I found people over-supplementing. And I don't see the research out there. And to me, it's a matter of opinion, but I'm convinced the body cannot metabolize and assimilate all the ingredients in all these different pills. And when I see a multivitamin with literally 200-300 different ingredients in it, I'm like, But I will tell you though, I'm a little under the weather right now. I'm battling a minor sinusitis and sinus infection. So when I'm going through something, that's when I use supplements personally. To me, supplements are a way to enhance my life. It's not part of my daily life. And if I'm looking to maybe get some focus or whatever, there's all kinds of different things I have, but when it comes to a daily schedule, there is none. But one thing I do like to utilize, and I don't consider them a supplement, but I like to utilize oils a lot for many different ways. I love to flavor my water, which in a sense creates antioxidant power and antimicrobial. So I love my lemons and my orange and my grapefruit in my water. I love to include, I love pumpkin pie spice. We talked about that, so I love to include my cinnamon oil and my pumpkin pie spice oils in like some honey as like a little treat for me and my kids to kind of boost our immune system. So to me, if anything, oils, but I don't necessarily consider them a supplement per se. It's not like in a pill that I take every day.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Z. Our conversation has been inspiring and chock full of fantastic information. And, of course, it has been in alignment with Source. So I thank you and send you blessings, and we'll sign off.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
God bless.